The key to a good deal on a Toronto rental, I was told, was speed. Don't ask questions, and don't worry about the weird smells. I followed that advice, which is how I ended up at 126 Aberdeen, a century-old Victorian in Cabbagetown. The house was a mess of character, slanted floors, groaning radiators, and a dizzying floral wallpaper that peeled in patches. My room was on the second floor, a decent size with a tall window overlooking a tiny, overgrown backyard. The most prominent feature of the room was the closet. It was built into the wall, with a heavy wooden door that didn't quite close, leaving a small gap at the top and a larger one at the bottom. A note from the previous tenant was taped to the door. "Do not worry about the noise, it's just the pipes." I chuckled, figuring it was just another quirk of the place. The first couple of weeks were uneventful. I spent my days exploring the city and trying to find the best coffee shop. The city felt alive, a sharp contrast to the quiet, almost suffocating atmosphere of the house at night. My two housemates were practically invisible, keeping to themselves as is typical in Toronto rentals. The whispers began on a cold Tuesday night. I was trying to read, but a faint, almost imperceptible rustling was coming from the closet. It was like paper, or a voice just at the edge of hearing. I sat up, listening. The house was silent save for the radiator. The sound stopped instantly. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just the building settling. But it felt more deliberate, a conversation I wasn't a part of. The next night, the whispers were back, louder. I closed my book and listened intently. Now there was a rhythmic scratching, like fingernails dragging on wood. My heart thumped. I got out of bed and walked to the closet door, my hand hovering over the cold wood. "Hello?" I whispered, feeling ridiculous. The scratching stopped instantly. A profound coldness seeped into the air around me, centered right in front of the door. It wasn't a draft. I backed away and dove back into bed, pulling the covers over my head. The scratching didn't return that night, but the unnatural cold remained, making the room feel like a tomb. Over the next few days, the fear consumed me. It wasn't just the scratching anymore. The closet door would be slightly more ajar when I got home. Sometimes I'd feel a brush of cold air on the back of my neck. The whispers returned, and they seemed to be forming words, though I couldn't make them out. It sounded like a low, mournful plea. I started to notice other things. Faint, childlike handprints would appear on the closet door, only visible in certain light. My books would sometimes be out of place, just enough to make me doubt my memory. The children's rhyme, "Ring Around the Rosie," began to play in my head on a loop. I began to research the house, poring over old city directories at the Toronto Reference Library. I found nothing to explain the chilling events. The lack of a clear tragedy made it worse, as if the house held a secret trauma it refused to share. A small breakthrough came when I found a newspaper article from 1957. A short piece, buried on a back page, about a missing boy. Local boy vanishes in Cabbagetown. His name was Thomas Miller, and he was last seen playing hide-and-seek with friends. The article mentioned the address, 126 Aberdeen. The police found no evidence and he had simply vanished. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. Was this the source of the scratching? Was Thomas still in the house? Was he in my closet? I decided to take a more direct approach. Armed with a flashlight, I knelt in front of the closet. "Thomas," I whispered, "is that you?" The scratching returned instantly, louder and more frantic than before. I felt a blast of freezing air, and the room was suddenly filled with the scent of damp earth and old dust, the smell of things buried. I recoiled, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The scratching continued, a maddening rhythm. I couldn't sleep. I was a prisoner in my own room. One afternoon, a terrifying realization dawned on me. The scratching wasn't coming from the inside, it was from the outside. The sound was coming from the narrow space between the closet and the wall, a space too small for a person. I pressed my ear against the wall. The sound was there, endless and desperate. The scratching stopped. My heart froze. The whispers started again, this time with an almost human clarity. "He's coming!" a child's voice pleaded. "He's coming for you!" A new voice joined in, a low guttural growl that sounded like grinding stones. "It's too late." The room was filled with a malevolent cold that pushed down on me. The closet door, which had been ajar, slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the house. Panic set in. I grabbed a crowbar and began to pry at the door. It was sealed shut. The whispers turned to screams. The low growl from the other side of the wall got closer. I realized the thing I thought was a ghost was not the malevolent force. Thomas's ghost was trying to warn me. The thing on the other side of the wall was the thing that had taken him. The house was not haunted. It was alive. And it was hungry. I managed to pry the door open. The closet was empty. But the back wall, the one I had realized was important, was different. There was a faint seam in the wood. It was a secret door, disguised to look like a wall. And it was slowly opening. From the blackness behind the wall, two small translucent hands, ghostly and skeletal, reached out. They were not Thomas's hands. They were the hands of a dozen children, their fingers twisted. They were not reaching for help. They were beckoning me inside. I heard Thomas's faint whisper, Don't go in." But the other voice, the one that sounded like grinding stones, was getting louder. "Come home!" it rasped. "Come home to us!" The hands, a dozen of them now, pulled at my clothes, their touch a chilling cold that seemed to burn my skin. I screamed, a raw, primal sound swallowed by the house. I scrambled back, my legs shaking, and ran for the door. It wouldn't turn. It was locked. I rattled it furiously, but it was useless. The house had sealed me in. I turned back to face the closet. The secret door was now fully ajar, a black hole in the wall. The ghostly hands beckoned, their silent, hungry plea a terrifying invitation. The voice of the house filled the room, a sibilant whisper that promised a cold eternity. I saw the eyes of Thomas Miller, a small, sad ghost, staring at me from the corner. He was a silent witness, another of the house's many victims. He had tried to warn me, but I was just another of the house's ghosts now. I was the newest resident in a long line of them. My screams echoed in the silence, a final futile cry of a new ghost, trapped forever in a Toronto Victorian house.